Imagine if you were driving on a road where there were no traffic rules. People are allowed to go at whatever speed they want. They could go in whichever direction they want. They are free to follow the signal lights or not, and the list goes on. Can you imagine for a moment what such a thing would be like? Accidents, people arguing against each other, in one word, it would be chaos. Isn't it the same with life? Sadly, though, none of us realize it until it is too late. Stick on to find out why. Hey guys, thank you for stopping by and welcome to another episode of Making Sense of Life with me, Mario. The hard truth of reality is, if ever our lives are going to make any sense, there's got to be a way. One way that would bring us lasting fulfillment. Life cannot be lived arbitrarily. However, it seems that we live in a world that is not marked by an objective morality, that right and wrong is what you make of it. Although such a thing may not be spoken explicitly in today's society, the thought process seems to have already been gone underway, buried in the minds of those for whom right or wrong do not matter. This is not some sort of simple do's and don'ts we are talking about, but rather, in trying to understand the need for an objective morality, we will come to realize that in adhering to it, life becomes more meaningful and more fulfilling. C.S. Lewis in his book Mere Christianity gives us a beautiful explanation as to why morality is not just about being good on the surface. He compares the whole of humankind to a fleet of ships sailing in formation. The voyage will be successful only if first the ships do not bump into each other, and second that each individual ship is running properly with its engines in good order. In this analogy, he describes two key aspects of morality. Like the fleet of ships, we should avoid colliding into each other. This is the first aspect of morality, which focuses on social relations and safeguards fairness and speaks of harmony between individuals, communities, and nations. We should avoid doing things that hurt other people. Most people today agree at least to some degree with this basic level of morality. The second aspect of morality is what Lewis calls the morality inside each individual. This is like the seaworthiness of each individual ship. Just as each ship in the fleet must have its engines in good working condition to ensure that it does not crush into other ships, so is it the same that each person must have his soul properly running with virtuous behavior to ensure that he does not harm others. People today are generally at ease with the first part of morality, the element of fair play in social relationships. But many are not all comfortable with the second part of morality, which focuses on one's individual's life choices and moral character. Many think, what I do in my private life is my own business. If what I'm doing doesn't hurt someone else, how can it possibly be wrong? For example, who cares if a person spends 10 hours playing video games? What he does with his free time doesn't matter. If he wants to play till 3 a.m. each day, that's his choice. Similarly, if a man wants to sleep with his girlfriend, what's the big deal? If she's a consenting adult, what can be the problem with that? If a millionaire doesn't give from his abundance to help those in need, or if an elderly person wants to end his life, these are personal choices, and whatever they choose to do in their personal lives is right for them. Each person is free to do whatever he wants as long as he's not hurting anyone. To respond to this, let's go back to Lewis's fleet analogy. It's not enough for ships to not just collide, nor is it enough for society to say, don't hurt other people. If an individual ship's rudder isn't working, then it is not going to be able to sail properly, nor would it be in a position to avoid crashing into other ships. The same is true of people, as Lewis explains. What is the good of telling the ships how to steer so as to avoid collisions if in fact they are such crazy old tubes that they cannot be steered at all? What is the good of drawing up on paper rules for social behavior if we know that in fact our greed, cowardice, ill temper and self-conceit are going to prevent us from keeping them? The modern tendency to talk about social morality, like for example, don't hurt other people, while neglecting what Lewis calls the morality inside each individual, is like commanding teenagers to obey the traffic rules without training them in the practical skills of actually driving a car. Unless individuals are trained in generosity in their so-called private lives, they are going to do selfish things that will hurt other people. Unless individuals are formed in courage and taught to endure suffering for the sake of what is good, they will do cowardly things that hurt other people. Unless individuals are trained in chastity, sobriety, and other forms of self-control, they will do things that use and hurt other people. Social harmony is built on the inner harmony of individuals. A great society is built not just on good laws, but fundamentally on men and women of great moral character, as Lewis would write. You cannot make men good by law, and without good men, you cannot have a good society. I'm not sure if you have come across this phrase called the culture of death. This is something that has usually been associated with suicide, but have we considered another aspect of death, namely the spiritual death? Is our culture spiritually dead, or is it dying? To put this in perspective, allow me to cite the experiment of boiling a frog in water. When you put a frog in boiling water, it would immediately jump out for the obvious reason that it is hot. However, if you put a frog in normal water and then boil it, gradually increasing the temperature, it does not realize it. By the time it has realized the heat, it's already dead. Don't we see something similar in today's modern culture? Humanism and secularism claim to have the answers to life's ultimate question, but not so. They fail to acknowledge the source of all the answers, which is God. In Proverbs chapter 14 verses 12, it is written, "There is a way which seems right to man, but its end is the way to death." The biggest sin today is the loss of the sense of sin and wrongdoing. Psychologists point out that humans strive for internal consistency in their beliefs and their actions. We become psychologically uncomfortable when there's dissonance between what we believe and what we do. We are not at peace with ourselves. So when we do something that doesn't match up with our beliefs and values, we have two options. Either we change our behavior to align with our beliefs, or we change our beliefs to line up with our behavior. Since it's easier to change our beliefs than change our behavior, many people are prone to find some way to rationalize their actions, to convince themselves that what they are doing is really okay. If, for example, I want to eat healthier and believe I should avoid consuming fried foods, what happens when I can't resist those crispy onion rings presented to me at a restaurant? I'll experience some inner turmoil. Part of me is uncomfortable with eating the onion rings because of the healthy eating commitment I just made. So I need to justify it somehow, and therefore I tell myself it's not that bad, or I'm only eating them this one time, or that if I eat a salad afterward, that will somehow make up for it. Onions are vegetables after all, so onion rings can't be that bad. Since it's easier to change our thoughts than change our behavior, we typically find some way to rationalize our actions. The same is true in moral matters. Deep down we know some actions are wrong, but when we do them anyway, we are not at peace. We have a guilty conscience. Now we have a critical choice to make. Will we admit we did something wrong and try to be better the next time? Or will we strive to change our behavior to conform to what we know to be good? Or will we willfully persist in doing what we know to be wrong? If we choose the latter route, we likely start to change our beliefs in order to silence the voice of our conscience and convince ourselves that we are still good people. We do this in various dysfunctional ways. For example, we blame other people for our behavior. We make excuses for ourselves. We rationalize what we are doing. We also distract ourselves, keeping ourselves constantly busy and entertained, so we don't have to stop and think about our lives, where we have been, where we are going, or who we are becoming. We keep up the blaming, the excuses, the rationalizing, and the distractions, anything to keep us from thinking about what we are really doing. You who are watching may or may not be a Christian. You may be an atheist or an agnostic. But whatever your beliefs are, here's one thing I want to point out, and that is God's law is inscribed right inside each of us in our conscience. Allow me to explain what I mean by it. The problem with most of us is that we fail to understand the reason behind the rules and norms of why certain laws exist. Imagine a father placing his toddler son surrounded by sweets and toys. For the little brat, this is heaven. But the minute he goes to eat the sweet, his father admonishes him. What's wrong with that, you may ask? Well, apparently at face value, there does not seem anything wrong, as any child would feel inclined to reach out for a chocolate if given the opportunity. But what happens after that is important. Let's say the child develops a taste for the chocolate and starts demanding for more, or finds ways and means to get the chocolate through various other ways. He would actually be doing more harm to himself. Not only would it do harm to him physically, like for example, leading to diabetes or tooth decay due to excessive chocolate eating, but also morally. Like for example, he develops a sense of resentment towards his father when he does not get what he wants. In a sense, this resentment is rooted in pride, which is the mother of all vices. It's like saying, "Who are you to impose your morality on me?" And this is a common objection seen in children who at times back answer their parents, or even among friends or individuals of the same social class. We can sometimes be like that child reaching out for that chocolate when we indulge in our selfish whims and fancies, which, if not controlled, could lead to addictions, causing us to wither both physically and spiritually. Think about the man addicted to pornography, or the man who's a spendthrift, or the woman who dresses immodestly, and the list can go on. Such things may bring us a high, they may bring us attention, they may give us pleasure, but it's only a moment, it does not last. Instead, it only destroys in the long run. Relativism is more than just a bad idea. It takes away the story, and it has the power to ruin people's lives. For a human being to lose the narrative thread of his life is dangerous. Think of what happens when we encounter a boring story. If we watch a movie that is going nowhere, we turn it off. When we read a book without a plot, we set it down. And when people sense that their lives lack purpose and meaning, they turn off in various ways. Some people fall into depression, while others become workaholics, constantly busying themselves because it is easier to keep up a flurry of activity than to face the emptiness in their hearts. Still others fill their souls with constant distracting noise and images from movies, the internet, social media, and pointless videos because they fear being alone with their own thoughts. This attempt to escape meaninglessness also manifests itself in addictions to alcohol, drugs, pornography, sex, and other forms of vices. What's worse is that when a person loses the narrative thread of his life, it could lead to suicide in the literal sense of the word. And here's why, as explained by William Kilpatrick in his book, Why Johnny Can't Tell Right from Wrong. The problem is not so much that they have lost their self-esteem, although that may be part of it, but more importantly, that they have lost the narrative thread of their lives. Life itself has become pointless without plot or direction. We are willing to endure suffering when it has meaning, but meaning is exactly what is absent in the case of a potential suicide. When suffering can be set within a narrative scheme, we manage to keep going, but life itself is pointless. Why put up with its thousand mockeries and cruelties? This is what relativism can do to our lives. We are all seeking to live the good life. But what is the good life? Such an understanding could be a very subjective phenomenon where the interpretation can vary from person to person. But here's something to consider if ever we are to make sense of what it means to live the good life. Just as a good watch is that which performs the function for which it was designed, or a good pen is an instrument that writes well, or a good harpist is one who plays the harp well, so is it the same with the human person. This is to say that something is described as good when it fulfills its telos, which is the Greek word for goal, or the purpose for which it was made or intended. And so with that being said, what would be the telos of the human person? Relationships. Yes, it is relationships. Morality is that one aspect which is unique only to the human being, which makes sense when spoken in the context of relationships. This does not necessarily have to do in the context of a spousal or family relationship. Rather, it extends to many other aspects of one's life. For instance, it could be one's relationship with one's work, or it could be with the environment, it could be with one's friends, strangers, and the list goes on. How one treats or deals with such instances in one's life would be an indication of where he stands in his moral state. A good person, therefore, is someone who lives his relationship with excellence. He possesses the virtues needed to live his relationships well. He is not good because he is nice, funny, or whatever attributes you may want to think of, but for the fact that he is a good human being. Now, all this sounds easier said than done, but that's the truth. If ever our lives are to be more meaningful, more joyful, more fulfilling, there is a way of living it. Life becomes more purposeful when one makes the shift from a freedom from to a freedom for. Freedom in the truest sense of the word is not doing anything we want, but what one ought to do. This is not to say that the other things of life do not matter. However, our ultimate happiness is to be found in Him, in the law that He laid out for us. So quite contrary to the thought that God's law is more of a restriction, it's actually a source or a starting point to liberation and ultimate fulfillment. Anything in life that is left to itself deteriorates. If one wants to make it grow and develop, the work has to be done. You take any aspect of life, be it fitness, gardening, entrepreneurship, and the list goes on. No one can just sit back and expect miracles to happen. It's the same with human morality. You either progress or you regress. There is no middle ground. No one becomes virtuous by simply sitting back and saying, I'm going to be virtuous. We have got to cultivate those habits that enables us to live virtuously, and that strength comes from God Himself. On our own, it would not be possible. The beauty of Christianity, unlike other religions, is this, with all due respects, and that is that rather than the human person seeking God, it is God who seeks out the human person. As a Christian, and more importantly as a Catholic, I believe that God is my Heavenly Father, the God who loves the whole of humankind so much that He personally seeks us out, reveals Himself to us, and even became one of us in Jesus, forging the road between Himself and us. The plight is, as the Catechism of the Catholic Church would put it, man tempted by the devil, let his trust in his Creator die in his heart, which consequently led to an ultimate lack of trust in His goodness, due to which we always want to try to do things our way. In humbling ourselves and obeying God's law, in acknowledging that there is indeed an objective morality, our lives would become so much more meaningful. If not, we may as well consider ourselves as animals living in a jungle governed by instinct. I do hope you have been able to find some value in this video, and if you have, do let me know down in the comments below of what struck you. If you like this video, please hit that like button, and if you would like to get more similar type of content, where I explore different aspects of life issues from a Catholic standpoint. Do feel free to subscribe if in case you haven't. Until then, take care and I will see you in the next video. God bless.